Коллеги, доброе утро. Всех приветствуем на сессии, посвященной...
Good morning, colleagues. I would like to welcome everyone at our session dedicated to the expanded responsibility of the producer. This is the incentivizing role of the stimulating role of the manufacturer's extended responsibility. The business and the state common growth points implement impossible to pay. This mechanism makes the manufacturers of the packaging which can be recycled after packaging loses its consumer properties to recycle that on their own or to pay the recycling fee. At the moment, there are more than 350 different schemes in 30 countries of the European Union, China, the United States, etc. And in Russia, we see also a trend which is related to the growth of the feeling of their responsibility, meaning that people see vulnerability of the environment, the long-term impact of the man-caused factors on the environment. And the questions related to the waste management become more and more important, and in some moments that becomes a part of the political agenda. As Ernst & Young, we are dealing with that for many years, and within our internal research we see that the extended responsibility mechanism may give some fruits. For instance, in Japan, our 4 years since actually the program was adopted, the recycling of different vessels increased, and in Germany the cost of recycling dropped, and in France about 15% of money was saved after the extended responsibility of manufacturers was adopted. We have gathered in order to discuss those issues. Let me introduce our speakers. First and foremost, Denis Kramov, First Deputy Minister of Environment and Natural Resources; Natalia Chestina, Director for the Development of the Youth Initiatives Foundation; Lyubov Milanevskaya, Executive Director of RUSPEC; Konstantin Razaev, President of RK Eco Technologies. Let me pass the floor to Denis. Denis, you're most welcome. Thank you so much. Well, in essence, this is a very important topic, and we have proceeded with the implementation of the extended responsibility of the manufacturer as an important element of the improvement of living standards in life. And only in 2015 the recycling has become a must for the packaging manufacturers, but really the mechanism was enforced since 2017, and there are several groups of products actually which are being enforced. So these are the recycling standards adopted until 2020. So the extended responsibility of the manufacturer has been implemented three ways. First of all, this is the recycling by the manufacturers on their own. The same can be done by the product importers. They can sign an agreement with different entities which provide for recycling. These can be the waste operators or some regional operators and other entities which are licensed to that. These may be certain manufacturers associations, and also they can pay an environmental or ecological fee. A new mechanism was launched in 2017 which fits very well this manufacturer's extended responsibility. I'm in National Ecology Project, which also envisages recycling of solid waste. So we have an ambitious task to increase the recycling of solid household waste from 5 million tons to 42. This would be about handling of the waste and their recycling. And bear in mind the general volume of about 70 million tons of solid household wastes which we have annually. Recycling will cover about 30% of the wastes. We can say that we are only in our infancy in terms of the implementation of that mechanism, and we are only building those systems. We're in the process of doing that. If we look at what companies, manufacturers and importers prefer to do, either to pay the fee or to recycle on their own, we see that there are different trends, but at the moment they'd rather pay the environmental fee. As for the recycling standards, they're not quite high. On average, they range from 5 to 25%, depending on the groups of commodities or goods. As the ministry which is responsible for the implementation of the environmental protection policy, our main objective is not to collect money for the federal budget, but in order to recycle as much wastes as possible. If we look at some separate groups of goods or commodities, we see diverse tendencies, unfortunately. In terms of recycling of paper and cardboard, we have data available only for 2016 and 2017. The data for 2018 would be ready by April, and most of the solid wastes are made of paper, and we have excessive paper processing and recycling capacities. The very fact that we cannot recycle more than 3.5 million tons of paper wastes, and we have some free capacities, and all in all, in Russia there is about 12 million tons of paper waste, so it means that there are some bottlenecks, and certain people prefer to pay the environmental fee, and rather than installing their own recycling capacity, we see the decrease in the recycling of the glass wastes, of the aluminium and tin wastes, as well as the polymer wastes. We see some excessive capacities, some free capacities. We can recycle more wastes, but unfortunately at the moment we do not see any rise in the utilization of the capacities. At the same time, we see that the recycling of the oil products increased, and tire recycling increased. So why stakeholders prefer to pay a fee rather than recycling on their own? So we are increasing the environmental fee rates. This is not a restrictive measure aimed to increase the products on the shelves of our stores. No, this is a step to make it more profitable for the manufacturers to reuse the packaging, etc. So this is a mechanism to stimulate the recycling capacities, and the rise in the rates, this is an integral part of the integral element of the system, which actually is comprised of recycling, utilization, storing, transportation, etc. Certainly we cannot do without some organizational bottlenecks and organizational issues which we have to address. The natural resources environmental authorities are using surveillance systems and other systems in order to make reporting on the solid waste recycling more accessible, affordable, and easier. It would be about certain accounts using which any manufacturer can submit the reports on that. We have submitted law for the consideration of the State Duma, which envisages a responsibility for non-performance of the extended responsibility and recycling standards. Unfortunately, Alexander Uzhevich couldn't stand Russia's frosts, and he caught cold. That's why his part of the presentation would be shown as a video. May we see the video? Thank you so much. A very interesting, very motivating video. In that respect, I would like to note that certainly the role of consciousness of the youth is clearly very important, and I would like to pass the floor to Tatiana Chestina, and she can share with us the experience of how she manages to stimulate, to motivate the youth to be more responsible in terms of waste collection. So based on our experience, in order to build a sustainable mass culture of responsible waste management, especially the separate waste collection, we would need accessible and transparent infrastructure and public awareness. Each of us sorting the waste at home would make this choice voluntarily, and with no other incentives for the separate collection of waste. So people should bear in mind, should understand why this should be done and how it can be done. If we look at the results of the public opinion polls, for instance, the FCIUM or the Russia's Public Opinion Institute poll or other polls, we can see that there are more people who understand why this is very important to collect waste separately. So we have a lot of bottlenecks when the capacities, recycling capacities, are not fully utilized, but at the same time there is a big problem of waste. And the accessible infrastructure of waste recycling and management, that's an important factor. We have to raise public awareness, arranging certain events, and that's why it may contribute to the progress in terms of raising public awareness of the necessity to collect wastes separately. And in the framework of the extended responsibility of the manufacturers, that would be pivotal. I'd like to show to you a video clip, a movie, which will showcase what methods we use in order to embrace and reach out for more people within those 2 years. Technologies which I'm going to show can be replicated and scaled up at a public level, at a governmental level, and we're very much interested in doing that because now the efficiency of that program would be even better. So share with us. This is a program proposed by Coca-Cola since autumn 2016, along with the partners. We're working with the school children because school children would impact their parents. So this is how we may reach out to the parents, and we're working with the undergraduates because upon graduation they will take certain decisions, including waste management, and we're working with the adults. This is the most difficult audience because it is not socialized at all. We have the Russia's wide lessons share with us, a series of 4 lessons, and now we have 14,000 unique teachers who made lessons for 700,000 students. How this been done? Teachers may download animated presentations, games, role games, presentations from our website. It will be a very interactive lesson in order to catch an eye of the modern students. There are some handout materials, some illustration how they look like, how the lesson looks like. So the program goes on, and we can disseminate these lessons in the Ministry of Education. Now to the importance and significance of the lessons share with us. And autumn last year, the Ministry of Education of Moscow region included share with us lessons into the methodological guidance for the Moscow region. Certainly we would like to see more that share with us program is included into the compulsory curriculum of all schools in Russia, because the problem of waste is quite acute for every region. So for the students, we use quest games, meaning that students get registered online. They perform 15 different tasks online. So the most important one is to convince the management of the university to buy bins, waste bins, where to sign an agreement with the recycling company, where to make informational press wall, to hold a festival for school children. So these are very interactive activities. And following the results of the program, 288 universities got registered, and 47 universities managed to implement the separate collection of wastes. So that's a very difficult step which they managed to do. So this is how it looks like in practice, how the students are doing those tasks. After the first quest, the students are made up as an association of green universities, which on a permanent basis every year do something in order to promote the culture. And the last component, working with adults. Eco-dvor, or environmentally friendly yard, was a success when activists working with their adults and children arranging some quests, some mobile waste collection, etc., etc., are arranged to involve more people. 190 different festivities and activities were arranged in 50 cities of Russia. 22,000 participants took part in that. 2 major conclusions. First of all, the recyclers that entered those environmentally friendly yards will see that actually the reusable bottles are much cleaner than they used to be, and secondly, the yards are equipped with certain infrastructure. Another technology which we use, this is a flash mob share with us, and 14,000 participants got registered, and certain prizes were awarded to the most responsible one. Also, we are making social advertisement and different video clips. And there are 10 cases of successful separate waste collection were proposed for the municipal education. So we published this manual. And there is such an activity on promotion of the separate waste collection, and if we raise public awareness and if this activity is supported at the public level, then the efficiency of such a program, such as Share With Us, would be even more pronounced, and much faster we'll come to some systemic solution of the separate wastes collection. Thank you so much, Tatiana. It was a very interesting presentation. That's great that the youth is getting involved into that process for responsible attitude towards environment. Let me also tell you, Danny said that the bottleneck is the underutilization of capacities. Konstantin Rzaev, president of Eco Technologies. The question goes to you. The manufacturer's extended responsibility, responsible waste management implies close cooperation between importers, manufacturers, and the recycling companies. How does this industry develop? I mean, the recycling develop, and how does the lines of manufacturers and recyclers? I will try to answer a question briefly. We are dealing with the waste for 14 years. For instance, we're recycling paper and plastic wastes. We are manufacturing recycling equipment, and that's quite important. And actually, we are going to build 18,000 more facilities to recycle than do exist at the moment, so that's a big potential for the future. When we're speaking about plastics, we're speaking also about cardboard and about glass, but we specialize in plastic recycling for two reasons. First of all, because plastics is a very convenient material in order to make a packaging to retain the quality of the product inside. It can be used in diverse ways. It is very attractive for the manufacturers, but this is not that the plastic packaging is so bad. Actually, plastic can be recycled better and easier than any other packaging. The main problem is how to treat the wastes, packaging wastes, whether we know how to collect that and recycle that. So we are a little bit behind other countries. Our main problem is how to collect plastic packaging and plastic wastes more efficiently. When we speak about plastic packaging, what we mean, that would be bottles which we use for potable water, different canisters, vials which we use at the kitchen, soft plastic, and in Russia we can produce out of those wastes different and diverse products which are quite popular. So this is what Russia produces out of recycled vessels and flexible materials such as films and packages. And there are certainly multi-layer wastes. This is the thing where the manufacturer's extended responsibility is very important and very helpful, because in that case we cooperate with the manufacturers. When we say that Russia is a little bit behind other countries, we are here, as you see. So this is the rate of the waste collection and recycling in East Europe. This level is below the one of the other advanced countries. And actually, absolute figure doesn't say anything. But 26% of what we collect is being recycled. But how much waste are being dumped at the waste yards? Actually, this is about 400,000 tons. And so it means that we are paying about 14 billion rubles per 1 ton of wastes. So 14.5 billion rubles, this is how much we spend on the waste which are being dumped at the polygons or waste yards. And using that, we could make 660 million for polyester t-shirts. Polyester, this is the best material for the sports t-shirts. We could make 30 billion boxes for salads or pies. This is actually used for the doggy bags. and about 3.7 billion square meters of non-woven materials or geotextile every year. Do we want to do that? Yes, we do, but the flip side of the coin is that we cannot do anything about that. No one wants it that there are new waste yards are built next to your house. But what can be done? We have to recycle that. I'd rather speak closer to the mic. We have to change our attitude towards that. Sadly, we have to change the legislation to do certain amendments. It would be very difficult to do that because we will contradict it. But fortunately, we are going into the same direction. We have to provide for the infrastructure. This is what we are doing. In the framework of Share With Us program, we actually embraced two vectors. First of all, this is about infrastructure, so we have to install separate waste bins for the separate collection or sorting out the waste, and we have to increase the actually recycling from 5 tons to 42 million tons. And this is the potential for the increase of our industry. It seems very easy. But why was speaking about the separate collection and sorting out the waste? Separate collection of wastes, apart from developing the infrastructure, for instance, where the school children are going to move that physically. This is a way to impact the consciousness of the people. So when people are reading what has been written on the waste bins, they start doing what they are called for. For instance, this is our Tver recycling plant. After we introduced the first containers or the first bins, actually 7 months afterwards, every container, every vessel started collecting 2 times more. So it means that when the people say that a special car would arrive and would collect the waste separately and would be dispatched directly to the recycling plant, so everyone saw that, and so we collected 2 times more wastes within every bin, and actually every bin collected the appropriate waste, the waste it is designed for. And in 50 cities of the country, we have more than 5,000 containers or vessels or bins for separate waste collection.
And it's not at a local level only. Well, whenever we have any significant event, last year Russia hosted Football World Cup, and FIFA had a special requirement for zero waste at stadia. So we put special garbage containers for plastic bottles and other plastics at all the sites. And people were quite careful in the way they disposed of their garbage. We had another interesting project, Basket Bottle. Obviously, it was implemented at a number of basketball stadia. We have to look at this whole issue holistically. There are 5 things, 5 outcomes that we have seen. When we had the new law, we saw several consequences. The organizations needed to collect and they needed to process. If they need to collect, it takes quite a bit of enlightenment. We need to educate people regarding waste collection. They have to understand that there are various opportunities associated with use of those solid wastes. And of course, then all this garbage has to be sorted out. You have already heard the numbers. They are very impressive. We're talking about tens of thousands of new jobs. We're talking about billions in tax payments. This is a big industry that simply did not exist only a few years ago. Many companies have not realized where they would be taking that garbage to. First of all, they have to understand what can be reprocessed and what cannot, what kind of complexity we're looking at associated with the reprocessing technologies. We know that many brands have switched to new types of packaging. Old packages could not be reprocessed or recycled, and the new packages can be recycled easily. A lot of recycling facilities are not working at full capacity. On the other hand, there are areas that have lacking capacities. We need to develop more recycling capacities. We have seen some very interesting examples of projects implemented by large corporations. However, a lot of things can be done at the grassroots level, at a household level, in offices. It's a matter of attitude. People have to change their attitude to garbage recycling. When we go to public places like stadia, when we see special collection points for plastic, that speaks very loudly about the need to recycle certain categories of wastes. This has a very positive impact, and like I said, this is great for the industry in general. There are a lot of new jobs created. Thank you, Konstantin. Thank you for reminding us about the Football World Cup. It was a very nice experience. The role of big events, the role of big corporations is very significant. They act as locomotives in this new type of production. But small and medium-sized companies also play a noticeable role. They have to be part of this big strategy. Now I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Kuzhavnikov of Opora Russia. Will you tell us about the role of small and medium-sized companies in this process? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Konstantin said that the program has been underway for 2 or 3 years. I remember in 2002-2003 I was the CEO of a Titan group of companies. We were recycling cardboard materials. Back then we could not achieve much in the way of cardboard recycling. We tried, but failed. Now the situation is changing. Mr. Khramov said that we have just started this long journey, and this is absolutely true. It is important that small and medium-sized companies should understand what they can do to contribute to this process, what they can do to recycle various types of wastes. This is something that must be talked about. The ministry is quite open to such discussions. We have had many conversations on that matter. The work is underway, but like I said, we have just started it. The president said that small and medium-sized businesses have to play a bigger role. However, most of them are just waiting for the rules of the game. My colleagues have said that we need quite a bit of enlightenment. We need to understand what has to be done. We have heard about the initiative to appoint garbage collection operators. Regions are now getting in gear to implement that decision. Where this is going to take us, many people still do not understand. I don't think this can be addressed only at the level of private companies. The government must play a significant role in explaining things and promoting these initiatives. We have to see general change of attitude, and then the garbage collection operators would work much more effectively, and they would make links to small companies that operate in different geographies. They will be placing more garbage collection containers in appropriate areas and do other things. We have heard about an initiative to introduce a new fee that would be like a tax. We are quite negative about that. We have been sending letters to the government informing the government about that. We had a meeting with Minister Siluanov and talked to him about the situation. There is a threat to have excessive administrative pressure on the business community. If we make it another tax, then there will be new potential for corruption. Tax authorities would be able to block companies' settling accounts, and that would be detrimental for the development of business. There are quite a few things that can be done. You may remember what has happened in the past. Remember what happened to the accounts of the pension fund. This is how long time ago was that? 18 months or 2 years ago? There was this one organization that had to participate in some procurement operation, but they could not do this operation because in the books the federal agency saw some debt which really wasn't there, but that still killed a big transaction. We have to have very clear regulations. We have to very well understand how we should all work together on this matter. And again, the tariffs should be well thought of so that people would receive a new incentive to participate in this work. We have just started this journey, and we should all make our contribution to this work. It's nice that Coca-Cola has put the garbage collection containers in front of the conference rooms. If there is a container, that is good. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to look for a container to put your plastic bottle into. Thank you, Alexei. That certainly is important to have clear rules and to develop new habits. In our organization, we did it too. We have put separate garbage collection containers. I remember how it was happening. People were still throwing all kinds of garbage in the same bins. So we talked to the landlords, we talked to the cleaning contractor, and eventually we were able to get to where we wanted to be. It had to be done, but it was not an easy journey. We have to join our efforts. to accomplish this. Now I would like to pass the floor to Executive Director at Ruspak, Mrs. Milanevskaya. Ruspak produces packaging. Please tell us about your thoughts. What can be done to implement best international practices? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to talk about the experience that we have at Ruspak Association. I believe that the role of package producers is key in the implementation of the new environmental agenda. Ruspak brings together a number of large producers of consumer goods and packaging materials. Look at the solid waste. There's up to 60 million tons that we produce every year. 40 to 60% of that is packaging. We are big companies, and we understand that the packaging we make is there. And we understand that we have social responsibility and legal responsibility to take care of that waste. It is important that much of this waste should be recycled and not just disposed in graveyards. Greater responsibility of manufacturers has been introduced to create incentives for companies to work towards this goal. We hope that companies will do that at their own level. The priority is given to individual projects. Companies create their own infrastructure. They would make contracts with specialized organizations or enter associations or communities of companies that are interested in better addressing this need. If we do it right, if we have a good, transparent mechanism for implementation of this expanded responsibility, then the costs will be lower. That is hard to believe, but this new fee has been introduced to make people do their part of the job and do it responsibly. We often hear a question: what does it take you to develop this system of broader responsibility? How do you encourage companies like Coca-Cola to participate? We look at what people do in other parts of the world, but today I decided to talk about 3 points. We need very clear rules of the games. We need to have very clear legislation and procedures. We want to make sure that all parties make their contribution. I mean, public authorities, corporations, and households. We understand what risks are out there, and that's also something that we will be talking about. And we need this broader responsibility to continue. We want this initiative to be successful. We don't want it to come to a cul-de-sac. We see that large international companies that produce consumer goods, that produce foods and packaging, should be invited to join this initiative. We need to understand clearly what kind of benefits this would give to different players. We must make sure that all investments we make are transparent. When we pay this environmental fee, we have to be confident that the money will be spent appropriately for waste collection and recycling purposes. We should make garbage collectors answerable. They should report on what they're doing. We have to have a way to see where our investment is going. Much of it has to do with corporate reputation. Companies have obligations, they have commitments, and most companies have sustainable development goals. When they participate in broader responsibility initiatives, that impacts their non-tangible performance. When consumers see that a company acts responsibly, they will prefer the products made by those responsible companies, simply because they take care of the society. The government is also giving benefits to those who act responsibly. We want to minimize the costs associated with collection of those environmental fees. We want to see more garbage being recycled. And there are well-known paths towards that. At the household level, we understand that people at the grassroots level can make the biggest contribution to cleaner cities, to a cleaner world. We have conducted a lot of surveys, and we see that people become more environmentally cautious. There's a higher level of awareness. People act more responsibly to help us protect the environment. If there is appropriate infrastructure available to the people, then people will be more inclined to act responsibly. I have 3 children, and they ask a lot of questions. They ask me when we are going to start a separate garbage collection. And when they put special containers for plastic, they were happy. And I was quite pleased too. I see that we have people from the Ministry of Natural Resources Management, and that is very good. There is quite a bit of need for new regulations for waste collection. We have done a survey in the association, and we have found out that many more companies are prepared to act in a new way. We're talking about a large number of companies, about large brands. I agree with what my colleague has said. If we have good positive examples, many people will follow. We would like to see more projects of this kind in the country. We want people to join this broader responsibility program. We have not been on this journey for a long time, but we see a number of new interesting initiatives. As of the environmental fee, I think there are several issues there. There are companies that may abuse the situation, and they will not carry out their functions in an appropriate way. We probably would benefit from better and clearer procedures. This way, we will be able to maintain good balance. People who joined the broader responsibility program have assumed certain risks. They have to make new reports and submit them, and that is certainly an extra burden. We want to create incentives for more companies to join. We believe that we need to find a good balance. This broader responsibility of manufacturers is a good thing, but we have to optimize the mechanism of payments. We also have to see what we can do about the organizations that evade such payments. Once again, the procedures should be clear and comprehensive. There's been some projects that have been launched but that have not been seen to the end. We have seen examples in various industries, in manufacturing of packaging, in manufacturing of consumer goods. We have seen that in tire manufacturing business. Most speakers at the end of their comments will make some conclusions. I would rather pose a question. If companies do not have individual responsibility for the broader social responsibility, we do not have the rates for 2019. The rates for packaging may increase by 300%. We know the old rates, and we know of the proposed rates. How is that going to work as an incentive if people will have to pay this new quasi-tax that will be quite heavy? Thank you very much. We have heard your message. We know the risks. Whenever rules are changed, that is always a big test for manufacturers, for consumers, for just about everyone. But then again, any change opens up new opportunities. They are new opportunities for cooperation, and new regulations may make it possible. I would now invite Natalia Belyaeva, CEO of Delphi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I know most people in the audience, and I think you know what my attitude is, but this is a panel discussion. Therefore, I will quickly talk about my ideas. The presenters before me have said pretty much everything about the current situation. We see that there are some positive things and there are some troublesome areas. I agree with many things that Mr. Kramov said, and I agree with the general attitude of the Ministry of Natural Resources. The reform was launched in 2014. It was accomplished despite the fact that there was quite a lot of disagreement related to this initiative. we see quite a new attitude to garbage collection and treatment. We want to achieve a zero waste situation. We want to optimize the use of resources that are available to us. If we have waste, we want to recycle them. People do that quite successfully in Europe. What is our objective? Previous speakers have talked about it at length. It's not about getting extra revenues for the budget. The idea was to make sure that manufacturers and recyclers make contracts and together bring us the desirable results. When it was started, this did not look like a tax. We looked at the European experience and developed our own strategy. There are two paths. There's a market philosophy, and there is an alternative philosophy. The Ministry of Finance is saying a simple thing. You can throw your garbage anywhere where you want because you've already paid the garbage fee. You can join the broader responsibility initiative or not. It doesn't matter. We made up in a situation when appropriate government agencies make a formula that they will use to calculate this tax or fee, whatever you want to call it. Manufacturers are now thinking about the possibility of recycling of the materials which they produce. They need to think about it to avoid problems in the future. Initially, the bar was set quite low. You cannot change this philosophy overnight. Change happens gradually. We have to give people time. They have to get used to the new conditions of doing business. We ended up with a new toolkit.
That would be besides sanctions. So they got some figure which they didn't say at the end of the tax period, and the question which is asked is where the money is. This paradigm that as a tax break or tax return we can use this environmental fee cannot be left. So has anyone tried to recover the VAT? What problems you may face? Starting from small size enterprises to big companies, which as a tax return would actually send a return not to pay but to recover the VAT. So they would immediately have an inspection. Inspector knocking the door, he would be regarded as a bad taxpayer until the fiscal authorities say, okay, this one is a good one. So this is a very alarming situation. This transformation of the ideology in the tax code would be exactly the same, meaning that the main objective is to increase the budget revenues. So the tax code actually doesn't provide for the opportunity to spend on the targets which were announced, and no revenues can be traced. So it means that you can collect 10 billion rubles and invest only 1 billion rubles, because you would say that this is the system within the tax code. If our main objective is to prevent the increase in the waste, not to raise the budget revenues, so why such legislation is being proposed? if actually this legislation is about setting up the infrastructure for a separate waste collection to streamline a dialogue. There will be more and more garbage rights, so to say, people protesting against setting up new waste yards. The manufacturer's standard responsibility implies that you have an option either to pay an environmental garbage fee where you do recycling on your own, and more prefer to pay a fee, so you still have to pay this fee. And there are some illusions that you don't have to do that. Others try to dodge paying a fee. But if we look at the Ministry of Finance's explanation to that law, you'll see that the problem is that there is no collection of payments and there is no motivation to pay the fee. No one says that something has to be recycled. So the Ministry of Finance thinks as a financial referee, meaning that if certain money has to be collected, where the money is, why they do not see the money. And so they are going to use this paradigm, and they are going to engage more and more authorities such as police, inspectors, etc., who will visit you to ask where the money is. Probably this is something which doesn't go without saying. My main message is that we don't have to discuss the Ministry of Finance's draft law, as it would be equally beneficial, give us an opportunity to recycle on our own, and others would pay the fee. So back to the VAT case. Tax authority is not looking for something it lost where it lost it, but they are looking for that where the lighting is better. So actually this is the search for the weakest link. We cannot speak about the efficiency of the market scenario. Our colleagues spoke about in every detail. A few words about the control methods. My presentation was called "What will happen if the administrator of the environmental ecological fee changes? Will it strengthen or toughen the control over recycling, or on the contrary, recycling would be over in essence, and it would be just increasing the taxes and increasing the fees? What do I have to understand apart from the fact that for the money paid we will be allowed to litter, in essence? I think that it will kill the whole industry. So the Ministry of Finance says we're not speaking about tax, this is about a fee to be paid. What the fee is, and the State Duma says that this is a payment for the legally significant action. So how the government is going to do the recycling of the wastes for what we are paying. So this is the money which is not just channeled to the budget, but this is the money you take in order to do something. So what the government is going to do if the state collects as much money as they have to pay to the recyclers? Why do they have to extend the capacities for recycling if most of the recycling capacities are not utilized fully? Who is going to collect waste separately if it is not needed for, and will become a country of no needed capacities, no needed technologies? The reform is aimed to derive something, to get something out of the system. There are certain indicators which say that the recycling volume should go up. Why it is going to go up? Why do we have to educate our children and our population who say, where this very bin, where I have to put this thing? And why do I have to put something into that bin if no one is going to empty it to take something out of that? So this is a shock scenario, a summary one, but I would like to motivate everyone present here, saying that we cannot agree on that just because the state probably makes a mistake. So the targeting by the Ministry of Finance is totally different from the targeting of other ministries. So this is what Mr. Medvedev said the day before yesterday. We see the overregulation in the environmental sphere, and it doesn't mean that we have to agree with this overregulation. Thank you so much, Natalia, for such a shocking scenario and an alarming report as a moderator. So let us proceed with the Q&A session. My first question goes to Denis Kharamov to follow his presentation. What's your position? What are the main differences in the mechanism proposed by the Finance Ministry from the previous mechanism? What's the position of the Ministry of the Environment? Thank you so much. So, and thanks God this is not the previous legislation, but the incumbent or the effective legislation. So, listening to Lyubov, Alexei, and Natalia, I don't think that we have to comment on that. That goes without saying, but the Ministry of Natural Resources totally agree that the effective legislation, which envisages the manufacturer's standard responsibility, this is an integral part of the National Ecology Project, and we are responsible for that, to increase the capacities of the recycling capacities. I can only say that probably in that situation we all have to be blamed for. The organizations rather prefer some phony, some forged, fake statements rather than paying something, and companies prefer not to think in advance, but they'd rather inject more money into something or pay the environmental fee. So this is the statistics which we have. So the Finance Ministry looks at the increase in the scope of environmental fees and enjoy that. So last year the environmental fee collection amounted to about 1.8 billion rubles. So this year it is 2.2 billion rubles. So next year it will be even more. So that's great for the Finance Ministry. But we are discussing with our colleagues, and we try to ram home our opinion, and certainly the government listens to us. I don't think that we'll come to an agreement. This is a very important topic, and without the capacities, which are very much needed, we cannot do anything. We have to do that. All the money channeled to build more recycling facilities, these are necessary elements in all this chain. From import and to recycling, we have a clear objective to decrease the volume of dumped wastes. That's why that's great that we are thinking alike. If you say that you may reach a compromise with the Finance Ministry, meeting them halfway, can there be some preferential regimen for the responsible companies and making life not so easy for the companies which not invest into the environment, which buy forged or false or fake statements or certificates? This is a stick and carrot principle, so this is a principle behind any regulation. So we try to do certain responsibility measures. So the Ministry of Finance also turns to us, revealing certain drawbacks in terms of how we administer payments. But I can only repeat that we are only in the infancy, we are lagging behind, and so the stimulation mechanism administration of payments and other mechanisms have to be streamlined. Thank you so much. Next question goes to Tatiana. Back to your presentation, which was about enlightenment and raising public awareness not only among the school students and undergraduates. What is the role of the state in this enlightenment and public awareness? Any ideas you have? Yes, we'd like the state to commit itself to some ambitious goals. As a Moscow resident, I see garbage collapse, and why? Actually, I take metro and I'm not told we can do this and that and that. So we can use those screens and banners to raise public awareness, and actually we can take a broader approach to the information policy. At least lessons are held in all schools. Business may face very ambitious goals too. In the movie probably you could see that Coca-Cola's strategy is to recycle 100% of the packaging. So every business should propose some ambitious goals. And the second thing I would like to echo what Natalia said at our most recent lesson. We speak not only about separate collection, but we speak about the zero waste approach. This is an important novelty. Federal Law 80, the priority of the public policy, which says that first of all we have to prevent the accumulation of wastes. We have to make a step forward, speaking not only about the wastes which have already been accumulated, but we have to prevent this growth. And we expected that the Ministry of Education and higher school will somehow be involved in that process. The garbage problem is of a state of public importance and has to be addressed by all the public authorities, not only by the Ministry of Natural Resources. Thank you, Natalia. Lubov, in your presentation you stressed the importance of retaining the effective mechanism, effective legislation, and you highlighted the risks if we lose the incentives for the manufacturers and packaging companies. In your opinion, what would be the conditions to be proposed for the recyclers and manufacturers so that they're more and more involved in their own recycling capacities? Let me sum up my presentation so that this is a takeaway lesson. First of all, we need some transparent rules installed at the level of federal laws and bylaws. In that sense, a lot has been done, and we would need just some specifications. We need the recycling statement, avoiding red tape, bureaucratic barriers. The Recycling Act or Recycling Certificate should be issued to confirm that a certain amount of waste has been recycled. The recycling technology has to be certified, and sometimes it is very difficult for the packaging materials because some packaging materials are of the 5th grade of hazardness. Such recycling technology has to be certified by local authorities, by core ministries. And among the recycling companies of Russia, just there are very few which can recycle the 5th grade hazardous materials. So should every recycling technology be necessary to certified by the Ministry of Natural Resources, then it would bring the whole process to a halt. So we have to streamline the rules of the game. As for engaging all the stakeholders into the process, I would like to see everyone working simultaneously. In 2015, for instance, the importers and manufacturers were to bear the responsibility of implementing manufacturers' stated responsibility, and laws and bylaws were adopted only last October. The population, people are ready to collect waste separately, but there are no incentives for that. So most of the incentives are of theoretical, of academic nature, and ideally the state should prepare laws and bylaws in advance showing what would be the rules of the game, and the population would be sorting, would be handling the wastes happily, and business may plan their own actions. The recycling standards and norms are adopted until 2024, and so these norms were adopted by the end of 2018, and we're still discussing how these standards are going to look like. Manufacturers and recycling companies, they're planning their business processes in advance. For instance, financing, funding, and budgeting process starts 6 months ahead. So it means that 6 months ahead we have to know what potential costs we will have to bear next year. The same is true of the standards and environmental ecological fees, because at the moment the rates are not approved, but the norms and standards are introduced in advance beforehand. So that's it probably. Alexei, my next question goes to you. In the light of some discussed changes, what expectations the small and medium-sized business has? What do you expect from the changes? And is the mid-sized business interested in changing the existing mechanism or changing it? Certainly we are interested in retaining the effective mechanism. We certainly are not interested in paying more taxes. And tax is the main burden put on the shoulders of the manufacturers. We have budget surplus in the country, and at the same time the country introduces more and more taxes. I cannot understand it. For instance, the resort fee, which also is proposed to be collected as a tax. Krasnodar region, for instance, collected some money. And what are they going to spend this money on? They say that they collected this money and they will install more bins and vessels and containers. But do we really have to do that? Would we need the resort fee if we have more indirect taxes in order to install more benches or to install more bins? Back to the business, to the small medium-sized business. Let me tell you once again, we are expecting the rules of the game to be explained, and we stand up for not dumping the waste but to recycle them. Our association comprises of lots of different unions, and the cable manufacturers, they happily and luckily recycle cable on the road, so their recycling capacities are fully utilized 100% as far as I know. So we just expect the rules of the game to be proposed, and enlightenment and public awareness, this is what we need too. Unfortunately, everyone does his own piece of the work. And when we see some interaction between the departments, there is no interaction at all, so on. As long as we do not have that interaction, nothing will happen. Just believe me. It is very important that all the stakeholders sit at a round table, not only the Ministry of the Environment, but all the departments are there, all the departments which are involved in that story. Thank you so much.
I will ask Konstantin, you are doing the recycling. Therefore, what do you think will be the impact of the new initiative of the Ministry of Finance on your operations? Well, in the past, it was so bad that today it is getting better, although it is far from perfect. People just started getting a feeling that they could make plans for months and years to come. We see that people are talking about it, and now there is a new change, and there is a big question mark on the horizon. I see that there's been some negative consequences. I know some people who decided to postpone acquisition of new equipment. In some areas where we wanted to do a separate waste treatment, the operators said that they should wait another quarter till things settle down. We are the least protected group of people. We are the entrepreneurs. We need some sort of a clear and stable situation, whether it's good or bad. Then we can survive. That is in our nature. We're the business people. We need to have some foundation to build upon, and it should not be shaky, because that is the worst case. I hope you take this message. I think it's quite clear. Thank you. Our time's up, but I will still give people in the audience an opportunity to ask questions. I have a question for Tatiana. Would you please introduce yourself? I am Igor Lishkov. Where it all started, did you launch your initiative to improve the image of Coca-Cola? You launched this new initiative for separate waste treatment. Lyubov has explained why companies do that. Large corporations have social responsibility. I think you were the first company that launched such an initiative. We are partners within this big program. We launched it together with partners. We have had a lot of experience educating people, promoting new ideas. I can tell you from my personal experience, when we did similar things in the past, the scale was incomparable to what we are doing today. The company has invested a significant amount of money into this. Without that, it simply wouldn't fly, and we wouldn't be able to scale it up. This is a great opportunity, and we want to make sure that it continues to work in the future. We don't want this investment to go in vain. We hope to see such programs developing into the future. I'm Igor Zharkov of Tat, California. In Russia, you are working towards a zero waste policy, but you don't have the equipment, you don't have the technologies for that. There's been a lot of research done on that, and theoretically, you know what has to be done. You know that you have to recycle materials, you have to recycle plastics. those wastes that cannot be sorted out and separated from the rest of them. It's not all about sorting. We have seen pictures of people working at sorting facilities. One should understand that those people have very dangerous jobs. They work at very hazardous sites. There is one popular line of thinking. We know what people do near Ruza and near Kolomna. They have sorting facilities, and then they end up dumping all the wastes at graveyards. We know what happens around those garbage incineration plants. The quality of air and underground water around those incineration plants is completely unacceptable. And that is true for territories miles away. We need to change the technologies completely. We propose to produce methanol that can later be converted into different other materials. This will eventually produce protein that can be used for animal feeds. We have been offering this technology. I'm sorry, you are taking too long. What is your question? The question is, we need to do specific work, and we need to stop talking about various solutions. We need to do something realistic. How can we realistically get to this zero emissions level? Let me start by saying that I disagree with the statement that Russia does not have technologies to support zero waste scenarios. We have quite a lot of research centers that have been working on such matters for a long time. There are quite good technologies for garbage sorting and incineration. We live in a market economy, and companies have to be sustainable to survive. Technologies that are detrimental to the environment should not be acceptable, and we have ways to not allow such technologies to be used. There are supervising authorities that will take care of that. Obviously, people are building new sites, new plants, and they have to be compliant with the environmental regulations. They have to be safe for the people. Some regulations, some requirements are still not there, but we see that appropriate organizations are developing them. The regulatory base is improving. There are many steps that we see being taken towards higher environmental standards. Big companies participate in big federal level environmental projects, and their work has been closely monitored. We look at the economics of garbage disposal and recycling. We look for all opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. In conclusion, I would like to say thank you to all panelists. We are looking to address a very big challenge. We have to look at the things we can do together. We should join our efforts. Thank you very much.